Hi Year 11, so we are on to a key scene in Macbeth. We are now on Act 1, Scene 5. As usual, what I will do is read through the scene and then I will go back through it and I will sort of analyse and break it down for you, making any relevant sort of contextual links that come to mind. So as always, what I will do is I will read it, but I will not actually say who is actually speaking, just so it doesn't sort of break the rhythm of the reading. As always, make sure that you are referring to the side as well to help you sort of decode what's being said and help you to understand that. So Act 1, Scene 5, Lady Macbeth is now reading a letter from her husband before welcoming him home and preparing to receive the king. So we are now in Inverness, which is an area in Scotland, at Macbeth's castle, and enter Lady Macbeth alone with a letter. So she is reading the letter here. They met me in the day of success, and I have learned by the perfectest report they have more in them than mortal knowledge. When I burned in desire to question them further, they made themselves air, into which they vanished. Whilst I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives from the king, who all hailed me Thane of Cawdor, by which the title before these weird sisters saluted me and referred me to the coming on of time with Hail, King that shall be. This have I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness, that thou mightst not lose the dues of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. Lay it to thy heart and farewell. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. Yet do I fear thy nature, it is too full of the milk of human kindness, to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldst highly, thou wouldst thou holily, wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. Thou'st have, great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do, than wishest should be undone. Heidi Hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round, which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. Enter an attendant, so a servant sort of comes in at this point. What is your tidings? The king comes here tonight. Thou'st mad to say it. Is not thy master with him? Who wert so would have informed thee for preparation. So please you, it is true, our Thane is coming. One of my fellows had the speed of him, who almost dead for breath had scarcely more than would make up his message. Give him tending. He brings great news. Exit attendant. So here we have Lady Macbeth now speaking to herself, but obviously to us as an audience to reveal what she's thinking and feeling. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan unto my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my foul purpose, nor keep peace between the effect in it. Come to my woman's breasts, and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers, wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, and pour thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. Enter Macbeth. So we have Macbeth now coming into view to speak with his wife. Great Glamis, worthy Cawdor, greater than both by the all hail hereafter. Thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant. My dearest love, Duncan comes here tonight. And when goes hence? Tomorrow, as he purposes. Oh, never shall sun that morrow see. Your face, my Thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, look like the time, bear welcome in your eye. Your hand, your tongue, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. He that's coming must be provided for, and you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch, which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom. We will speak further, only look up clear. To alter favour ever is to fear. Leave all the rest to me. Exeunt. Okay, so as I said, I'll go back through that and break that down for you then, so that you've got a sort of clear understanding of what's being exchanged between the couple, and so that you've got those connections then to context. So as I said, at the start here, she's reading this letter that Macbeth has sent to her, and this is information that we already know, because he's just relating to her what's happened with the witches. So they, suggesting it's the witches, met me in the day of success, and I have lived by the perfectest report. They have more in them than mortal knowledge. So I suppose contextually here we've got this link, this idea that the witches know more than a mortal would know, that they somehow have this supernatural ability to be able to pick apart and understand what was going to happen before it actually happened. When I burned in desire to question them further, they made themselves air into which they vanished. So, I mean, again, we've got this sort of link contextually here again. So, more in them than mortal knowledge. And you've got the, they made themselves air into which they vanished. So again, this is a belief that Jacobean audiences had. Jacobean audiences believed that witches could disappear, they could make themselves into air and disappear. Whilst I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives from the king who all hailed me, Thane of Cawdor. So, you know, he's telling them again what we already know. So we already know that as the witches had told him that he would become Thane of Cawdor. Just after they left, he gets the message that he's going to be the new Thane of Cawdor. Again, remember that's a title of a traitor, which is significant because he himself had become a traitor. Interestingly enough as well, we obviously refer to them as witches, but throughout the text they are never referred to as witches. They are referred to as the Weird Sisters. Saluted me and referred to me to the coming on with time with Hail King that shalt be. So again, just relating to Lady Macbeth what the witches have told him. This have I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness. Now that is important as well, because in the exam you may well be asked about the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and at the opening here, at the very start of the play, this is how he is addressing her, and this is significant contextually as well. The fact that he is referring to her as a partner suggests equality, and that idea of greatness as well. It's again sort of lending to her this status that as a woman she wouldn't really be sort of entitled to. The idea of being seen as an equal to your husband wasn't around at this time. As a woman, you were subservient to your husband. You would be of a lesser role than him, even if you were a woman of if you had a title. So the fact that he's a thane, that wouldn't really matter. You would still be subservient to your husband. And if you remember last time I mentioned this idea of a great chain of being, even if you were royalty, for example, if you were a queen, you would still be subservient to the king, so you would be beneath the king, and you'd probably be beneath the princes as well. So it would be the kings, the king, the princes, then it would be the queen and the princesses. So the women would always be beneath the male in the house, so they'd always be subservient to them. So the fact that he addresses her as such is really significant. He views her as an equal, and you could even argue that really this shows a kind of weakness in him as a man to address his wife as an equal, and that would be seen as maybe part of his downfall, because she does end up having such an influence on him, because she is the one, and we'll look at this as she speaks later on in this scene, about sort of her battlements, and you know, you'll put this knight's business into my dispatch. She's very controlling at this point, and that sort of leads to his downfall as well, because he listens to what a woman has to say and she controls what happens, and that ties into his demise. Thou must not lose the dews of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. Lay it to thy heart and farewell. So again, it's interesting that he sent this letter. He views her as an equal, and I will make a little note of that, particularly there with that word partner. So it's creating those connotations of equality. which in a Jacobean era would not have been common. And the fact that he's sending her this letter as well, he's sort of sharing this information and news with her, whereas later on in the play we have this juxtaposition, this contrast, where when he plots for the death of the Macduffs, he actually says to her, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. So he doesn't share and confide in her, which at the opening here he does. He shares everything with her. And this is now her speaking, her reflecting on this letter, and we get an insight into Lady Macbeth. And this is our initial and first impressions of her, and they're not good. So, Glamis thou art and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness. So we've got a really important quote here. She's describing her husband. Now, again, as I said, it's been really, really important so far in the play what other people have thought of Macbeth. The fact that he is seen as valiant, brave, worthy. She actually describes him as too full of the milk of human kindness. And this, again, this is sort of kindness, this idea of gentleness and compassion is more stereotypically associated with femininity, being kind, gentle, and actually she's accusing Macbeth of being almost too kind, and therefore almost too sort of feminine really in his ways. So it's a negative description of him here. To catch the nearest way, so to snatch at, to sort of do things in a bad way. Thou wouldst be great, so you would be great. You're not without ambition. Not without ambition. And again, that is a really important quote, because ambition is a key theme as well in the play. And actually, ambition, you can argue, is Macbeth's fatal flaw. It's his hamartia, because it leads to his downfall. His ambition to become king is what drives him into committing regicide. It's what leads on to other deaths and assassinations that he orders. So his thirst and drive for ambition is ultimately what leads to his downfall. And she kind of plays on that. She's aware of that. So this idea as well of her being sort of quite manipulative is a very kind of damning introduction to this character from the very outset. And as a Jacobean audience, she would not be received positively. But without the illness should attend it. So again, she's sort of showing that he's not wicked or cruel enough to sort of use that ambition to further himself. And as I said, she's kind of showing that she realises that. What thou wouldst highly, thou wouldst thou holily. So what you kind of dearly go after, you do things in the right way, you do it in a righteous way. You won't play false, so you won't lie and pretend, and yet wouldst wrongly win. So you wouldn't wrongly win something, you'd be unwilling to do that. Thou'dst have great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do. So is this idea as well, she's already kind of having this idea of pushing him into doing what she wants him to do, that she knows he would be afraid to do, he wouldn't want to do things this way. Then wishes should be undone. Heidi Hither, so this is very kind of, this would be viewed very negatively. So Heidi Hither, so hurry home, hurry back, and think about the imagery that this is creating here. That I may pour my spirit in thine ear, and chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. And you've got the description of that over here. So when she's saying, I may pour my spirit in thine ear, so basically I want to be able to talk you into doing what I want you to do. I may pour my spirit in thine ear, and chastise you with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. So to chastise someone is to kind of put someone down. So she's going to effectively almost bully her husband into doing what she wants him to do. So very negative portrayal of this character from the outset. It's a very unflattering description, or portrayal rather, of women in this play. We have sort of very negative portrayals of women here. Which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. So, you know, the supernatural already has or wants you to become king. and she's just going to speed that up. So the attendant arrives, she's asked, what news do you have? And the attendant tells her then this information that the king is coming tonight. And she's sort of taken aback, felt mad to say it. It's not their master with him, so she's sort of, what you on about? Isn't Macbeth with you? Who weren't so would have informed for preparation, because he would have told us, he would have given us warnings to prepare for it. And the attendant sort of replies that, yes, that's true, our Thane is actually coming. One of my fellows, so another attendant, another servant, had speed of him, who almost dead for breath, had scarcely more than would make up his message. So he's travelled slightly faster than Macbeth, and has brought this message sort of forward and earlier. Now, this is probably one of the most important speeches that Lady Macbeth gives at the opening here of the play. So give him tending, he brings great news. So, give him attention, give him care. She's very much controlling as well at this point, because we have this kind of imperative. She's very much in charge. So again, kind of setting up this very authoritative portrayal of Lady Macbeth. She has a lot of authority here. The raven himself, his horse, that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. So I'm going to highlight some key words here, because it's really, really important. The raven, you've got the description over here of the raven, because a raven is a sort of a bird of ill omen. So it's a bad sign if you see a raven. And fatal, think about sort of that word fatal. If you talk about a fatal car crash, it means that, someone has died. So she already is immediately thinking about the death of Duncan, because she's talking about the fatal entrance of Duncan. So it links to that idea that she's already got his death, his murder, regicide on her mind. And here we've got under my battlements. So this is really interesting as well, because obviously the castle would belong to Macbeth. She's a woman, she wouldn't be able to own property in this era, but yet she uses that possessive pronoun to suggest that it belongs to her. And battlements obviously being suggestive of battle and of fighting. So we've already got in our minds this idea of conflict. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. So here again, very interesting, because as a woman again, she is invoking, calling on these spirits. She's calling on the supernatural. So very negative portrayal, because remember, King James was scared of the supernatural. He wrote a book about witches and about sort of the supernatural. And he sort of condemned it. He was actually one of the reasons that we had sort of witch trials over here in the UK, where women were actually accused of witchcraft and burnt to death. So this kind of plays on those fears. But it very much aligns Lady Macbeth with the witches as well. And that's not to say that she's calling on the witches here, but she's definitely kind of calling on forces of darkness. And sort of it aligns her with this idea of negative, evil, and dark spirits. So it links to supernatural, and then I'm just going to put evil there because it links to that theme of evil. That tend on mortal thoughts, so spirits that, deal in mortal human lives. Unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Now, really, really key imagery here. And I need to point this out. She is not asking to become a man. She doesn't want to turn into a man. That's not what she's asking for at all. What she wants to do is kind of unburden herself of her femininity and her weakness as a woman. So this idea then, women were seen as kind of feminine and weak, and that's what she wants to be taken away from her. She doesn't want that kind of weakness of her sex, of her gender. So it's not that she wants to become a man, but she wants to be, she wants to take away that feminine weakness. And instead she asks, and we've got this very key imagery here, so she asks to be filled from the crown, from the top of her head right down to the toes, full of direst, of the worst kind of cruelty. And this would be shocking to a Jacobean audience, to hear a woman speak like this. And she asks, make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse. So she doesn't want to feel bad about this. Again, we've got this imagery. She wants to stop feeling. She doesn't want to feel anything negative. Shake my fell purpose. So again, you can use the side notes here. My fierce purpose. So she's very much fixed on this. Already she's very fixed on the idea that's come into her head, and obviously she hasn't revealed this yet to us, but we already know that it's the idea of killing the king, because she's already hinting at it here, the fatal entrance of Duncan. Shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect in it. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall. Now this is a very important image. My woman's breasts and take my milk for gall. Now, breast milk is probably the most important indication there of kind of being maternal and doing something motherly, because effectively that's what breast milk's for. It's to nurture a baby, and she is taking something that is so sacred in terms of being motherly, and particularly what women were seen as being made for it in this day and age. She's taking something and she's completely subverting it. She's taking something that should be nurturing and an act of love and care and maternal feelings, and she's completely flipping that, and she's referring to the milk there. She's asking that it be made into gall, and gall there you've got again that reference over here. It's a bile, a bit of fluid secreted in the liver, and it's almost acidic then as well. So she wants that milk to almost turn poisonous, to turn acidic-like. So she's taking something, like I said, that should be seen as very, very typically female and feminine and maternal, and she's completely subverting it. So she's flipping it right around. So there's that subversion of her role. And as I said, an audience at the time would be disgusted with this behaviour and what she's saying here. But there's this subversion of her role as a woman, because that's what they believed, that women at this time, that's what women were for, to have children, to be wives, to be mothers. Murdering ministers, wherever in your sightless substance you wait on nature's mischief, come thick night and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. So she's sort of going on here about she wants the night to arrive and sort of hide her true intentions. So there's a lot of sort of dark imagery being created here. That my keen knife, see not the wound it makes. And again, this is a sort of key image that's being created here, because we've got this possessive pronoun, my, and we've got alliteration bringing attention to this phrase, my keen knife. So I'll just make a note on that, possessive pronoun. So again, kind of putting her in charge of this situation. And we've got then as well, like I said, we've got this alliteration which draws attention to that phrase, but I'm particularly interested in that word keen, because keen can have two meanings there. It can suggest sharp, but it can also suggest like enthusiastic. If you are keen to do something, you're enthusiastic to do something. So it's a little bit of a wordplay, that adjective suggesting, potentially talking about the knife being sharp, or her being enthusiastic and keen to want to do this. See not the wound it makes. So we've got this idea of deception here as well, this idea of appearance versus reality, which again is a very key theme throughout the whole of the play. Nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. So she doesn't want to be stopped by heaven. And this is where we've got this kind of a biblical reference. And that's interesting, because actually throughout the whole play we never ever sort of encounter any sort of authority from the church or anything. And this is a reference then that's important, because it is that biblical reference. at this point then, as she's kind of expressing these thoughts and these ideas, Macbeth enters. So she addresses him, great Glamis, worthy Cawdor. So again, these sort of interesting use of adjectives to describe him, because he's echoing almost what was said about him at the very start. Greater than both by the all hereafter. So she's focused here. I mean, that's kind of where she's emphasizing her focus on him becoming king. Thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant. So she's already fixated and feeling happy and joyful about this idea of him becoming king, and obviously her becoming queen. And again, we've got interesting description, my dearest love. So again, there's sort of an emphasis on affection and closeness within their relationship. He refers to her using this superlative, so the highest form of comparison. Duncan comes here tonight, so again, he's sort of confiding in her, telling her what's happening. And then she sort of immediately asks, well, when is he planning to leave? And Macbeth informs her tomorrow is his sort of purpose, that's what he's chosen. Now, here we have this very sort of open, oh, never shall sun that morrow see. So we've got this sibilance here, and almost offers a kind of air of sinister, a feel of being sinister here in what she's saying. So she's kind of suggesting, he's never going to see the sun tomorrow. In other words, he's going to die here. And this is a key quote, because again, it links this idea of appearance versus reality. Your face, my Thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. So in other words, you can see exactly what you're thinking when you look at you, so you've got to stop behaving like that. She's sort of suggesting you can clearly see what you're thinking by looking at your face. Interestingly enough, because that kind of contrasts with what Duncan had said about the original Thane of Cawdor, and said that there's no construction in the face. Oh, let me actually find that for you so we can compare it properly. Here it is. Okay, so literally just in the last act, there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. And yet, here's Lady Macbeth saying to Macbeth, well, I can see what you're thinking straight away just by looking at you. When Duncan, in the previous act, had kind of said, well, you can't tell what a man's thinking just by looking at him. So Lady Macbeth then gives Macbeth some advice. So to beguile the time, look like the time, bear welcome in your eyes. So behave like the best host that you can. And she's sort of using this very famous then quote, something that again is a good one to learn. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Now, a really key bit of imagery here, and you've got that kind of image here to kind of remind us of it. So it's this idea of appearing one way, looking, behaving in one way, but actually having some evil intentions and bad intentions beneath that. It's almost this idea of being two-faced, really. But the idea in the reference to a serpent here is particularly important because it is this reference, it's a biblical reference. And it's a biblical reference to the Garden of Eden, and this idea then of the serpent that tempted Eve into eating an apple from the forbidden tree, and tempting Adam into doing that as well. So, and that is the sort of origin story of original sin. That's where sin came from. It's a really important sort of link, particularly as a Jacobean audience would understand that as well, because they would have been sort of highly religious at that time, where going to church was mandatory. You had to go to church, so they would understand that reference. So that is significant, that's important. He that's coming must be provided for, and you shall put this great knight's dispatch into my this business into my dispatch. Now that is important because she's using this imperative and she's commanding her husband. She's telling him what to do, and again, that would not be appropriate at this time. So she's kind of demanding there, and it's through this use of then the imperatives. she's commanding him. So this great noble warrior, this, bloodthirsty killer on the battlefield, is being bossed around by his wife. And for the audience at this time, that would be horrific, that would be ridiculous. Which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom. So this is going to be the kind of beginning of our life as king and queen. And he says we will speak further, and he's being kind of, again, declarative here. So there's not that much authority really in what he's saying. He's trying to sound like he has authority, but it's more of a statement rather than actually a command. We will speak further. But interestingly as well, he uses that collective pronoun we, so including them almost like equals again. So saying we, suggesting, like I said, that they're equal, and almost giving her that air of, she has some say in this, which, like I said, to a Jacobean audience would be ridiculous. A woman wouldn't have any say in making choices, particularly about the household, particularly about something so significant. But yet, this is how she's being portrayed. Only look up clear, to alter favour ever is to fear, leave all the rest to me. So again, she kind of leaves it on this command. So she's kind of saying, don't worry about it. Change the way you look, disguise the way you look, and then leave everything else to me. So she leaves it on this imperative. And we have this kind of end focus on me. So again, suggesting that she's kind of commanding him and that she's the one in charge of this situation. So hopefully that's really helped with breaking that down. It is a really important scene, and there's loads of information and loads of quotes that you can use there as kind of key quotes for various themes, and there's a lot of contextual links as well in this scene. But any questions, feel free to drop me a little message on our Google Classroom, or just go ahead and drop me a little email.